As I was playing Eiyuden Chronicle, it became clear pretty quickly that as a Suikoden fan, this is everything that I've wanted as it relates to a continuation of the series. Eventually, Konami will release the Suikoden remasters, but until that time comes, I think Eiyuden Chronicle is going to firmly scratch that itch. As I kept playing, it became obvious that there was no way I was going to be able to remain objective, so at least for the time being, I'm not going to commit to a review. But I do want to do something fun and see where Eiyuden Chronicle would rank as if it were an official part of the Suikoden series. And for this ranking, we are not going to include Decreases or Tactics or any other spin-off that I forget to mention. So, that in mind, let's dive in. At the very top of my list is going to be Suikoden II. Look, I know that's not a surprise because I feel like it would be unanimous amongst the fan base, and if it's not, it's probably really close. But this is a game that has very few flaws, and if you've played it recently, you can confirm that the game is still fantastic today, and that it really holds up well. I mean, localization issues aside, the game's just great. And it features so many notable moments, with the top of the list probably being the fight with Luca Blight. And listen, here's the deal. Luca Blight is probably one of the greatest JRPG villains of all time. And here's the reason why. This is a character that features no special ability. So he doesn't carry a rune. He doesn't carry a true rune with him. He is essentially just a normal human who happens to be powered by hatred. That's it. That's it. That's what blew my mind as a kid, because when you're fighting him and he like kind of throws oil on his sword to light on fire, I was like, why not just have a rune or something like that? It's probably just a crutch to him. So the man just went out and fought multiple units of your team by himself because he could. The dude is a monster. And I think that fight just sits with me, and I cannot wait to see it in the remaster. I'm hoping that there are like some special animations added. That would be amazing. Just pointing that out. And when I was younger, it really led me to question whether or not the game had peaked. And I think we all know, if you've played the game, that it absolutely did not. I think the narrative for Suikoden II is fantastic, and this is one of the rare JRPGs that is an improvement on the original in every way. Base building was fantastic, there was engaging side content, you had all the different team-ups you can find, and I also believe that this is the best game in the series when it comes to recruiting. Look, the fact that you can recruit the main character from the first game is fantastic, and it's one of the early examples of a game showcasing the impact of the decisions you made in the previous game. This feature carries over throughout the franchise, and I do believe that the implementation here in Suikoden II really elevated the game. This is one of the best JRPGs of all time, and for the life of me, I do not understand what is taking Konami so long to release these damn remasters, because to me, it is a layup. Just do it already. And I just want to note that not every game I bring up is going to have a rant to it. I just feel like Suikoden II is one of those games that I really want to talk about. But next on my list is going to be Suikoden V. And here's the thing. It took me multiple playthroughs to really appreciate this game. I don't know what it was, but I felt like the first time I played it, it just didn't click with me. But as I went through the game, and then I got to like a second playthrough and a third playthrough, I was like, you know what? This is a pretty fantastic game. I really like the upgrading visuals. I love the voice acting. I like the story. I like the different twists that it takes. And I really had 3 in this spot before, but I think compared to 5, I don't think 3 holds up as well. And I think that's primarily due to the pace, which can be kind of all over the place due to the differing perspectives. But when 5 gets going, it's pretty great. And I think that my favorite thing is that you have so many characters from the franchise who are pretty much at their youngest, and you get to see them at their most powerful, in my opinion. Like, I love the fact that we get to see George Prime in his youth, and you also get to see Killy as well. And, you know, listen, I know Killy's not exactly a really strong character, but he has one of the best designs in the game. I just love the way he looks, and I will always go out of my way to recruit him. It's just really all you need. I really enjoyed Suikoden V. I don't know how many people felt about that, but to me, it was like one of those games where it was just such a great pickup from 4. Moving on, we have Suikoden III. I think the game is pretty great. It's the first time the series was seen in 3D. It featured multiple perspectives, for better or worse, a number of unique characters and races that were hinted at, which was really cool because we finally got to see something different other than like kobolds, elves, and stuff like that. We got to actually see like duck people, which I thought was awesome. I think that was one of the coolest things. And I think this game, and I'm probably going to be wrong somehow, I know some fans going to refute me, but I think this game has the best representation of the true runes and their power. And the reason why I say this is because in Suikoden 1 and 2, we get the Soul Eater, we get the Bright Shield rune, and we get information on them, but all that stuff's kind of inherited. When we get to Suikoden 3, you have a character in Godot who is the true lightning rune user, and you get a lot of history with him. A lot of lore. He's fantastic in my opinion. He's probably my favorite character in Suikoden 3. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. And every time I was able to click on Godot and able to select him, I was given so much information about the true runes and just kind of the overall history of the land itself, which I thought was really great. And I think Suikoden 3 has a really solid story and has great world building, but it takes a while to get going. It really does. The pace is all over the place at times, and there are some times where it just kind of slows down a bit too much where you should be gaining momentum. But when the three protagonists do come together, it is pretty great. It just happens to take a bit of time, and you really have to be patient at times. Also, the side content found here, especially with longtime series characters Uber and Luke, is pretty great. Is very surprising that you get to see some differing perspectives. It is a treat to see what happens to Uber because pretty much for the entirety of the franchise up to this point, he was a huge pain in the ass. He was a big mystery. And I think Luke getting more depth here was great for the series. Suikoden 3 is a meaty game, so you will have a lot to dig into. After Suikoden 3, I think this is where you can firmly place Eiyuden Chronicle, or as I'm going to call it for this segment, Suikoden 6. I think that the plot of this game is simple but solid. I generally like a lot of the characters. There are a number of interesting interactions. And this is basically what I think a modern Suikoden would look like, right? But here's the thing. I understand that if you're out there and Eiyuden Chronicles the first game that you've played, I mean, shit, Suikoden 6, the first title in the franchise that you've played, you're probably saying to yourself, everyone talks about these in-depth characters and the complex plot, and none of that is here. Completely get it, but I think that what's here is fine, and there are some really heavy moments. I think there are some great interactions with characters. I think what you have here is really good. It just isn't Suikoden 2, 5, or 3 good. Okay? Now, this game has a number of problems that gets in the way of fun. And the one that I think that is pretty much at the top of my list is the recruitment mechanic. The thing that pisses me off the most is that it just features too much busy work. Character recruitment being dependent on resource gathering or unearthing rare items is not fun. And some of the players that you have to actually go out and do these things for are important for base building. And if you can't get them, it can really hold back progress. I really feel like character balance in this game is all over the place. The drop rates for items can feel insane, and that really makes the game feel retro in the worst ways. I also dislike the lack of control with the camera, and I really feel like that works against you in exploration. And the other thing, and I don't know how many people are going to agree with me, maybe everyone, but the overall speed for your character feels lacking. The fact that I need dash boots, that I need an accessory in general to make me go faster is not cool. Just throwing that out there. But here's the thing. Suikoden 6 is at its best when the game has clear goals. There are far too many times where the game stalls because it says, hey, go recruit some people. And to me, that removes the organic feeling when exploring and meeting new characters. What's crazy to me is that there are so many quality of life improvements in this game when looking at the Suikoden franchise that it's unfortunate that it's held back by some strange decisions. I will say this though, if recruitment was a bit more cohesive and they got rid of the busy work, I can comfortably move this up past 3. And that take might be blasphemous because I know that there are some people who absolutely adore Suikoden 3 because of how different it felt from the series. Don't hate me, but I'm just saying, I think the overall updates for Eiyuden Chronicle, Suikoden 6 can push it firmly past 3 if the game continues to get patched. I'm just saying. The next game on my list is the OG Suikoden. This is probably going to be controversial, but I think the game is still very good, but it's just a rough replay. I think the game does a number of things well still, but it can be really clunky at times. And I think really the best thing about the original is that it's clear that the developers wanted to create a vastly different JRPG in comparison to what was dominating the market at the time. The game has so many great moments, from Ted giving up his true rune, Tyr becoming the de facto leader for the Liberation Army, Pan's duel with your father, Grumio's sacrifice, and more. And if I spoiled any of that for you because the game has been out since 1995, shame on you, not shame on me. But also, I'm sorry. It was one of the first JRPGs that I can remember that really rewarded you for being prepared. I remember believing that certain events couldn't be prevented and that there were deaths that couldn't be avoided. But when I found out that these characters could survive those encounters, that they would die in, and you could recruit other characters ahead of time, I immediately became a fan because it was so different than every other title on the market. And as this is a ranking list and not a tier list, I do still recommend starting at Suikoden, as the game has so many connecting threads, and it is a very satisfying feeling to see all the different storylines play out as the series goes along. So, as dated as Suikoden is, it's still a really good game, and I think you're going to be surprised about how well it actually holds up with certain things. So, do yourself a favor and play Suikoden. The last title, which I don't think will be controversial, is Suikoden IV. So here's the deal. I don't think 4 is a bad game. And if you happen to have 4 ranked above any game in this list, what I'm gonna say to you is that you better have a paragraph for me to read. I will read every comment that comes up here. If you put down why Suikoden 4 is the best, you better have that paragraph ready for me. Because if you just say, hey man, I just like Suikoden 4, dismissing that. I need reasons here. Because when you compare this game to everyone else in the franchise, you go back to back to back, it's a clear step down. It's what it is. And what's crazy about that is that I think 4 has the best setting in the franchise, and I think it features one of the best true runes. Because here's the thing. The rune of punishment is one of the rare instances of consequences for the user. It saps the life force of its user until it dies, and then it immediately transfers to the nearest person. That adds a level of intrigue to the plot. Well, it should have, right? It should have been one of these things where, like, we finally get to see what one of the more devastating runes can do. We've seen it with the Soul Eater. We thought that was really cool when we got to see Ted give it to Tyr in Suikoden 1, and I think that this was one of those instances where we could have had that here. But the thing was, overall, the plot was just okay. It was by the numbers. It didn't take any real risk. And yes, Ted returns here, but that is the only mission that I can remember in the game. Largely, Suikoden 4 is forgettable. I think this has the worst characters to recruit. I think the large-scale battles are lacking. And because it's set 147 years before the start of the original game, it is the most disconnected. I think there are maybe 2 to 3 characters that appear here and appear in other games. That's it. Because nothing you really do in 1 through 3 matter here, which I think takes away from the fact that the game is known for being able to transfer save data and having it actually matter. Your decisions matter. They can't matter in the past, just pointing that out. It's probably one of the most frustrating things about the game. I really remember looking forward to 4, and it was just a disappointing experience because when you had 3, which had a number of really cool ideas, the different perspectives, the way it approached like some of the world building, that type of stuff, I was like, yes, 4 is going to be a natural step forward because that's how the franchise was building momentum. Instead, 4 is easily the worst in the series, and I don't think it's close. It's one of those like really simple games that's not a bad game, but it's not a good Suikoden game. If this was a tier list, I would put Suikoden IV in the C or D tier. This is one of those games that I think I want to forget. And if Ted wasn't in this game, I probably wouldn't remember this at all. This game was the reason why we were all skeptical about 5. And what's crazy about that, and I know I use that word a lot, is that when 5 dropped a year later in 2006, it was miles better than Suikoden IV. And that gave all of us hope that there was a future for this franchise. But instead, we're waiting on Konami. And the thing is, if Konami happens to re-release all of the games, I think 4 is the one that can benefit from it the most, or it could really hurt the game a lot because there's just not a lot there that really advances the franchise as a whole. Like, you will see in comparison to 3 and 5 just how weak 4 is, and that's kind of frustrating. And I'm hoping that maybe if 4 gets a remaster, that they do update it a lot. It would be nice. I'm just pointing that out there, and I'm very sorry, but I do think that 4 is the weakest in the series and should firmly be in last. So that is going to do it for my official rankings for the Suikoden series, to include Eiyuden Chronicle. And I really do think that it's just the spiritual successor, because at this point, do we really think Konami is going to continue the franchise? I mean, they're struggling to even release remasters at this point, which is incredibly frustrating. But with Eiyuden Chronicle, I think that it would be a really good game in the series. I think that it would just be behind 3, but I'll be honest with everyone, because it is a modern title and because there are a number of things that can be patched and fixed and balanced, there's the possibility that if this product becomes more polished, becomes a little cleaner, that it could be better than 3. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. I don't see it overtaking 5, and I for damn sure don't see it ever touching 2, because let's be honest, Suikoden 2 is one of those games that is good no matter when you play it. To me, it's like Chrono Trigger, a JRPG that has so many features that you'll never get bored regardless of your playthrough. Everything about Suikoden 2 is just top tier. Now, Eiyuden Chronicle is eventually going to have DLC, and I am curious to see what that's going to bring, because I want to know what it's going to change narratively, or if it's going to add any depth to the characters. No information has been put out so far, but I really am hoping Eiyuden Chronicle does well commercially, because I think that it may force Konami to make a move regarding the Suikoden franchise. Now, I'm hoping that they don't do something foolish like acquiring Baron Rabbit Studios, because I don't think any of these developers would like to be under the thumb of the company that rooted them out in the first place. But honestly, they're probably the only ones I really trust with the franchise moving forward. And I think a lot of us are very interested in the Suikoden remasters. I think a lot of us are really patient, but I think our patience is really wearing thin, because it shouldn't take this long. They should have had something by now. And the Suikoden remasters are going to definitely bring new players to experience the franchise for the first time, but it's going to bring all the existing players back. We want to see what's new, what's been added, what's been cleaned. I think it's going to make the entire fan base very happy, and who knows, maybe the sales of it will end up having Suikoden's 3, 4, and 5 all get remastered. I think that would be great. Time is going to tell, but one thing is clear. Eiyuden Chronicle would be one of the better games in the franchise, and I'm curious to see where people would rank it. Now, to end the video, I want to apologize to any of the Suikoden 3 purists. I am sorry. I understand that a lot of these individuals are going to have 3 above 5, but I think that 3 just dragged at times, and I think it killed my overall enjoyment. But I can totally understand if you want to put, 2, 5, and 3 ahead of Eiyuden Chronicle, or you want to put, 3 ahead of 5, sure, whatever. But in just saying, Eiyuden Chronicle is one of those games where it feels like the more I play it, the more I feel like I can slot it ahead comfortably ahead of 3. Maybe I'm just crazy. But that's going to do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and go play Suikoden.